Never thought. Never sit on these.
Okay, we're back. We're back on, and you're at Four Star Films. Talk a little bit about Four Star Films itself.
About it,
Yeah.
it was 4 stars. It was David Niven, Charles Boyer, Ida Lupino, and Dick Powell. And Dick was the head guy and a really smart businessman. And when they gave me the job, they said, we will move you along. And they did. I was only there 2 months, and I got, because I was getting nothing compared to what I had been making. And they doubled my salary, and they did all the things they promised, and it was wonderful. And I met there Jackie Cooper. And Jackie Cooper was my, I mean, if it wasn't for him and we would not be talking. And he was wonderful to me. He gave me a show. The network screamed bloody murder. This was, by then I was over at Screen Gems. And it was a hit show. And Inger Stevens, who was the star of it, was fine with it. And Jackie was fine with it. The network was really not. They didn't know me even. But he demanded that I get the show. So that was, 4 Star was wonderful for me. It was, incidentally, they did great work there. That's where Aaron Spelling came from. That's where Richard Simmons came from, and Lincoln Levinson, who created half the world, half the things on TV they did, including Columbo and all the rest of them they did.
Now, would you be seeing these people on a daily basis?
Well, yeah, because like when I did the Michael Shane thing that's on that list somewhere, they were kids on the show too. They were talented from the top, and it's amazing the stuff they did. I mean, if you look at their list of shows, and they lasted their show, still running now. So yeah, and Aaron was just a kid who used to write intros on the Zane Grey show for Dick to do. They had good people there.
Was there a certain philosophy to Four Star?
I don't know. I think Dick just had an instinct for stuff like that. The associate producers, I can't remember all of them, but they were guys like Stan Kalis, who is not a household name, but he did a lot of producing of a lot of major shows and subsequently. And there's just a lot of good people there. It was a nice place to work.
Then you said you moved on to Screen Gems with Jackie Cooper.
Yeah.
Talk a little about Screen Gems at that time.
Well, it's a subsidiary of Columbia Pictures. And it was a sitcom place, and it was pretty successful, And then they got into our stuff also, but it was just a good place to work. I know Jackie was wonderful because he did something that I'd never had happen to me. He said to me the first year on Farmer's Daughter, "This is how much money you have. I don't care how you spend it. It was a couple of $1 million. You can spend $70,000 on an episode or $50,000, but you can't spend any more than this amount of money." So that gave you the right to do elaborate shows, and then you could always say, "Inger's in bed, has a cold," and everybody comes to the bedroom. And those are cheapo, and they sometimes work out better than you. You can always find a cheapo idea. So I loved all that. Jackie just turned 80. I can't believe he's 80. I only think of Skippy, just a little. It is terrific. Everybody needs those guys. Somebody to help you.
And talk a little bit about the show, The Farmer's Daughter itself.
It was based on the movie that Loretta Young won an Academy Award for, and it's a Swedish maid working for a congressman, upscale congressman, and they fall in love. I mean, that's it. But you had to hold the love off, or the series ended. I did the wedding show, and we beat Bonanza 1 week. It went up like this. The wedding went right back down again. And that was the end of it. We had nothing to hold. We had nothing more to give. There was nobody cared about how their love life, how their marriage was going to go. It was this maid and the congressman concept. It worked real well, and to get an Academy Award like she did. Not Inger, but Loretta. Yeah.
Talk about working with Inger Stevens.
I love her. I mean, she's just a great lady. I would tell you I would tell you a story that will tell you about Inger Stevens. We had a very complicated episode, a lot of costume changes, and I said to her the night before, "You got to be here on time." Why? I said, "I don't know," because she was never late ever. And the next day, she comes on the set 20 minutes late, and I actually yelled at her in front of the entire crew. This is the star of the show, right? That's grounds for throwing her behind us. And I yelled and yelled, and she said, "Can I just talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Yeah." We went outside, and she said, "The makeup lady was late." That's her. I think she was a rare bird. and so beautiful.
And so you were with the series till the end?
Yeah. I took Peter Kortner did the first year, and I did 2 and 3, and that was all it was.
What did you do after that? Was that when you did Gidget?
See, I just did the pilot to Gidget. I think I did the second 100 years. I've tried to forget that show, but it keeps coming back in my mind. It was a show about a guy who's frozen in an ice cube, and there's something about that idea that I just couldn't get my arms around exactly. But I had a contract, and that's what I got. And they thought that was the best show of the year for them. May have been, but Bill Sackheim did Gidget, and I just did the pilot.
Well, talk about that. How did it all come about?
Gidget? Oh, that was a movie, and Columbia owned it, and so they wanted to do it, and they found, Eddie maybe, and everybody, say Eddie Foy found her out of some valley high school, I can't remember now, and she was absolutely perfect. She was a terrific actress. She had a sense of humor. She was the cutest thing. It still is, and was perfect. But she had no experience, so the network was apprehensive, and the executives of Screen Gems were apprehensive. So they put 4 girls in the class, and 2 months later, we did the pilot. And I did her first screen test, and I remember walking up to her thinking she wanted a glass of water. She was as cool, man. I mean, she knew exactly what she was doing, and I mean that only in a complimentary sense. She just had a lot of confidence. She's a wonderful, instinctive actress with a great ability to play comedy. Sometimes doesn't get to play enough of it, in my opinion. I wish she played more. But she's amazing. But anyway, we did another series after Gidget. We did Girl with Something Extra. It was another idea that didn't work.
What was that about?
It was a girl who had ESP on everybody. So here's the end of it. You're married, right? It's terrible. I mean, she knows what her husband's thinking. I mean, how do you make that? We made a great pilot. I mean, a wonderful pilot. I don't know why, but when we tested over at that place where everybody tests things there, it went through the ceiling, but we couldn't do it. We labored over ideas, and we had Zora Lampert, Jack Sheldon, Terry Garr. We had a wonderful cast. We had no words for them to say, unfortunately, but it was okay.
In 1966, you produced The Occasional Life.
Yeah, that was funny. That was 2 kids. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember how we got to the premise. I can't remember how it worked that they have this deal to pretend to be married. And they lived up and down, so they went up and down the fire escape and all that kind of stuff. And it was cute. It was a peppy kind of show. They ran around a lot. But in the end, it won a year. So that ain't a hit.
And Harry Ackerman was the executive producer.
Yeah, Harry was the executive producer of everything in the place. And he was a really good guy, too. But eventually I broke away from him on Girl with Something Extra and the Western we were just talking about. You've got the notes.
Here Come the Brides?
Yeah, thank you, yes. I'd take you with me. I wouldn't be fumphing all over the place. But anyway, it was, yeah. And things like that. I had my own group. But I didn't mind working with Harry. He was fine to work with.
Let's talk about Here Come the Brides. What's it about?
I love that show. It's a Western with no guns. And it was written by N. Richard Nash, who wrote Rainmaker. It was really a classy show. It was really well written. Bill Blinn was a wonderful writer, and he wrote a lot of those. And he's the guy who wrote the Gale Sayers thing, the Chicago Bears story. Somebody must know the name of that here. It was a movie that won every award in the world at any rate, and Billy D. Williams played him, and they made a movie about it. They made it over again. But anyway, so Blinn was the head writer, and he was wonderful. And we had good scripts, and we had, Bobby Sherman turned out to be a wonderful actor. And we had David Soul, who was another brother, and Robert Brown, who nobody knows, but who was very good.
How was David Soul? He was a pretty early...
Yeah, he was all right. Joan Blondell we had, who was a dream. I was directing one, and I started to give her a line reading, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And she said, "Hey, I'm not Betty Davis. Give me the line reading." She was, just a great. She was what you would call a great broad.
What was the premise of that series?
No, it was the wives, bringing wives to Seattle, and that was the premise. So that was all over the West in those days. So it was a bona fide story and fun because you had people to draw from. You could draw from. We actually did a show called A Jew Named Sullivan, which was a wonderful episode, won a lot of awards, and we went back into the old religion where women had their period. They had to be dunked in a tub, and we did all that on this episode. It was so good. But we did all kinds of stuff, but no fighting.
You directed that one, didn't you?
No, I didn't. No, I wish I did, but I didn't. No, I don't know who did that. It's funny. It would have been a dream to. That was a wonderful episode. I wish I could remember who played that. She was wonderful. I keep thinking it was Linda Lavin, but it couldn't have been. She could have been. She was young then. I don't know.
I know Daniel Travanti played Sullivan.
Yes. Yeah. He's always been a good actor. He's here. Oh, you know that.
And after that, is that when the Partridge Family came along for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that and Interns the same year. I directed and produced the Interns pilot, and I just produced the Partridge Family. That was a big deal for me.
Talk a little about the Interns first. What was that about?
Interns in a hospital. And that was a movie that Columbia had done, and so we did we had 4 doctors. I'm trying to think if anybody of them are still around because they were good actors. Steve Brooks gone. Chris Stone is dead. He was married to Dee Wallace Stone, and Hell, can't remember his last name now. He was the black actor, and he really had a lot of the lead. And I'm trying to remember. And Broderick Crawford was the head doctor. Broderick, incidentally, since he's dead, I can say, Brod had a serious drinking problem. Right? So we came back from lunch one day. I was shooting a scene with a little boy in bed dying, and Brod has to just walk in the room, look at him, put his hand down on the kid, and walk out. And he came in, started to put his hand down and missed the kid. Trying to put his hand on the kid. That's how drunk he was. So the AD said, I think we're going home. But, he always apologized every day, and he said he was sorry. No more drinking. Here it is. Pepsi-Cola. Of course, it was full of vodka. Was it just a can of Pepsi-Cola? But something, he was a wonderful guy, but it was a pain in the you don't know what you were going to get done. And I can't remember, we had a couple of women in that thing too, but they didn't become notable. They were good actresses, but I don't remember them. It ran one year. We had some very good directors. Dick Donner did some of them, people like that. That was pretty good. Leo Penn, father of. We had good people. And Blinn did that one too.
You talk about the Partridge Family. How did that come about?
Bernie Slade came into my office one day and said, why don't we do a show based on the Cowsills, which was a big singing hit group, and we went with it. He wrote a really good script. It was very funny because it was Danny Bonaducci had really the lead in that one, and he's always been funny. 8 years old, he would say something very funny and not know what he was saying, but he'd say it funny, and he always would turn to me and say, what does that mean? I mean, he just said it. And to this day, he's kind of funny.
And who's Bernard Slade?
Writer. He wrote, how about Same Time Next Year, Tribute, a lot of plays later. He actually wrote Same Time Next Year on a plane to Hawaii. He went on vacation with Jill, his wife, and he was not getting any work. And he wrote that play. And he went to Broadway with the play, and he rewrote nothing, and not because he was being stubborn. There was nothing to rewrite. It was an amazing, and the producer was very smart. He kept secret that Bernie had written Bewitched and all these other shows because the Broadway critics, I think, because that show did have, if you think about it, a touch of sitcom in it. We meet once a year in a motel but it was very well written and very well done, and it was a smash. It was played all over the world then. So that's where.
Now, is this the first time you were working with him?
Yeah, but of course we all knew each other. It was a fraternity working in that place. We all hung out together.
Okay. You mentioned that the Cowsills, it was based on the Cowsills. Were they involved at all?
We went to interview them, and we opted not to involve them. They had a little girl. The little girl singer was wonderful and cute, but the rest of them were just they weren't actors. So it was not just didn't work out.
Was there any contention because you were kind of basing it on their
I don't, not that I know of, because it was you can't legally do anything with the fact that you're a singing family. I mean, that goes back to the Boswell. So, you know, it goes all over show business. No, we didn't have the structure of that family either. There was one girl and 4 boys or something, and the father was the manager. I don't know. It was different.
Now, when the show when we were first coming up with the concept for the show, how fully formed was it in the beginning?
Slade had pretty much a lot of it in mind, and it's all arbitrary when you make a family up. You just have to be different ages, and we did want Laurie, Susan Day, and David's part and Danny's part. They were the keys, obviously Shirley. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I've told this before. I did not want Shirley Jones, and the only reason that we had Shirley Jones is because everybody said I was wrong and they were right. She was perfect for that show, but I didn't want her. I had the idea it would be somebody spunkier. Of course, that would have been a terrible idea.
Did you have somebody in mind?
No. Just dumb. Sometimes you just have a dumb mindset, and that was a dumb mindset. But fortunately, there was a lot of people around to cure that. So.
How was the show cast?
How? We saw Renee Valenti was the casting director then, and a vice president in charge of other things, but casting director. And we had hundreds and hundreds of kids, and we never found the Laurie character in Los Angeles. Believe it or not, all those kids, we couldn't find the person. And then Paul Wood, who was the associate producer on the show, then grew to be quite successful, went to New York and found Susan, who had never acted a day in her life. She was a junior Vogue model. And we brought her out, and I have this, my theory, everybody who directs knows that listening is harder than talking, and she could always do that. You cut to her, and she always had she was always listening. And it was a short shot from there to becoming a very good actress, which ultimately by L.A. Law and stuff like that, you see has become a very good actress. And there's something about Partridge Family, she refuses to ever show up for any of their events. But I understand it, and I don't understand it. I understand her desire at the beginning to get away from it so that she wasn't tarred by that every time she went. But you can't, you see. You can't get away from these shows you play that are successful. I mean, David Cassidy can run around forever, and he used to fight that. Now he doesn't fight it anymore. He opts to be proud of it because you can't do anything about it. It's kind of like a mole or something. It's just there.
Who was the first performer cast of the show?
Shirley.
And then when did David Cassidy come into the picture?
He all through the casting that I was talking about, we didn't cast one part at a time. One day it'd be different people all day. And David came in, and none of this stuff. It went very simply. David came in as David Cassidy. Nobody thought anything about Jack Cassidy or Shirley Jones or anything like that. And when we cast him, he's the one who told Shirley that she was going to be his mother in the show. Because we're not going to run actors by actors. It's not a good idea. And she, of course, was thrilled. But that was a scary moment, because what if they didn't get along? That would have been a bad way to start out. But they did. They always had.
Did you know that he was?
I knew he was. I knew it very near the end. It's Cassidy. A lot of people have the name Cassidy. So I didn't. And Jack was a wonderful guy, but he had great problem with. He had kind of jealousy over David's career, and that really was too bad, because they had a parting of the ways, and eventually they got back. But Jack died horrible death.
What about Dave Madden?
Dave was wonderful. We all were okay with Dave. There were a lot of guys out there who could have played this part, but Dave just seemed right. He was really perfect for it. And he and Danny played wonderful comedy scenes together. There's a wonderful comedy scene in that show. You didn't ask this, I know, but there's a scene between Danny Bonaducci and Jodie Foster. Jodie was 5 or 4 with that same voice. And they were in a soda fountain, but the scene was written as if it was a boy and a girl in a bar. it's just a cutest, wonderful scene. So that's it. We had occasional guest stars. We had a show with Richard Pryor. It's the best show we did. Paul Witt directed that. Richard Pryor, Lou Gossett, and it was, the Partridge Family was booked into a town, and then they were booked into a black nightclub in a black neighborhood. No more white act in the world than the Partridge Family, right? And that was the premise. It really was a wonderful episode.
It's called something Soul.
Yeah, something. I don't know the names, because the names of those things, they never appear anywhere but on the script cover. So I don't know, but that was a terrific. But I don't think, I'm going to tell you something. I think Richard Pryor is the single greatest talent in my lifetime, only to almost be equaled by Chris Rock now, because I think he's amazing. I love comics, so and Robin is a wonderful comic.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Danny Bonaducci, how did he get cast on the series?
Came in and read, and that I would take credit for, because everybody liked another kid, and I kept saying, I don't care about the other kid. He has more experience. This kid's funny, makes you laugh. That's all I needed. And he was wonderful. He was a great idea. He made that pilot work. You know, he really did. It's a big job for an inexperienced actor.
Jeremy Gelbwaks?
Yeah, he was one of the little kids who didn't talk. He was nothing. I was very happy when they were going to Washington, because his mother was quite annoying, and so nobody ever noticed. Never got a letter.
Oh, and he was replaced by Brian Forster?
Yeah. I mean, it's, well, look at Bewitched. They changed leading men, and the show went on. But this was, nobody knows. These kids didn't talk anyway, and it didn't. And Brian, I didn't have any problems. And since their lawyer called up and said, I know this is a fruitless call, but you don't think the show has any chance of being renewed, do you? And I said, oh, no. We were really getting hot then. Not a smart lawyer. But it wouldn't have made any difference. They wanted to move to Washington. And I've seen him subsequently at when Danny had his TV show stuff, and he's grown to be a really nice kid. He was always a nice kid. He and Danny did not get along. I mean, and Danny, it was better this way.
And Suzanne Crowe?
She's a nice kid. She'd probably have 5 lines in 4 years. Didn't talk much. We give her a little triangle. Just had little kids around. I think we did one episode where they ran away from home or something.
Let's talk a little bit about the characters too. The family, the family itself as characters. What were you, in terms of the family itself? Were there specific rules in terms of their?
Not rules. We had a concept that Susan was the smartest, and that David was kind of not too sharp sometimes, and Danny, of course, is the unique character. I mean, he's way before his time. He grew up, and that was the characters. And Shirley was the glue that held it all together, the sane person, which she always was. And every once in a while I did one with George Shakiris, where she had a date or something, or that wonderful friend of mine who died, Bert Convey. We did a few, but those weren't too interesting. No, people didn't want to see that. They wanted to see the kids.
What about the musical aspects of the show?
That was all a credit to Wes Farrell. He found the songs, he found the songwriters. I can't remember the names of all the songwriters, but many of them have become national stars of songwriting. He was wonderful at the music, and he knew what he was doing, and I didn't really stick my nose into it much, because he was doing it perfectly, and I had nothing to contribute.
What about the merchandising of the music? Was that something that you were concerned with?
No, because I wasn't getting any part of it, and I wasn't concerned with it. But I'll tell you what, Columbia owned the publishing company and owned the record company, and we had, the first record was the #1 in America. Now, if you want to talk about making money, they made a fortune off the music. And they're entitled to it, but they really did clean up. There was lunchboxes and dolls and all kinds of stuff. But I wasn't involved because, first of all, it wasn't my church in the first place, and second, I had no vested interest in it, so to me it was advertising.
And how was the music done?
We went into a
sing?
recording studio with the Baylor brothers and something Ward, I forgot, Jackie Ward, and David. We didn't know David could sing. Misunderstanding. He was cast as an actor, and he's the one. He went to Wes and said, I can sing. I'd like to sing on the records. And Wes tried him out, and then he called me and he said, "This guy can really sing." And to me, that was manna from heaven, because it just makes it more legitimate. And so that's how it worked out. The Wards, the Baylors and Jackie Ward are people that sang backup in many hit records. They were really good, and that's where the sound comes from.
Did you have anything to do with that opening animation sequence for the show?
No, I did. I worked with Sandy DeVore a lot on it, but we had a limited budget, so that was partial animation, and I thought he did a good job on it. It worked out okay. He's a very talented guy. I used him in some other shows. I can't remember which ones, but I used him. There's a name I haven't thought of in a long time. It's coming back to me, like Sandy.
And what about the theme song itself, which actually changed in the second season?
Yeah, I can't remember the machinations. God knows.
What about the bus concept?
I never knew who thought of that. It was a wonderful idea. I know I didn't, but I think that was a great idea. I love the way that thing looks, and everybody could recognize it. You know, it was. It was a very hard show. It was a hard show to travel with for that reason. I mean, and not only the bus, but the whole thing, because we had that kind of audience, and they were all around the ranch there every morning, little girls, and then we went to Cincinnati. I had to hire 75 policemen to shoot a show in that Six Flags there, and I produced and directed that. We had thousands of people there. There was a lady there with her kid. And David Cassidy came to me and said, no, I came up, it was me. I had a broken nail. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you have a emery board?" And she said, I do if my son can meet David Cassidy. So I got David and blah, blah, blah. But these were all gentle people, Cincinnati, near Cleveland. And it was a wonderful experience, but it was really overwhelming for a week there.
Now, how did these stars react to their newfound celebrity?
Well, Shirley was already an Academy Award winner, so she had a pretty good comfort level, and she didn't get bothered. It was David mostly.
And how did he respond to that?
Well, he did what any young man would do. He took advantage of some of it. You can figure that out for yourself. I mean, yeah, he had manna from heaven in that place. And he had a dressing room outside the stage there, and I don't even think. I know we try to keep Danny out of there, that's all, but he kept wanting to go there.
From a production standpoint, was it difficult working with child actors?
Only by the clock, that's all. So a guy like David would go out on a weekend and play to a couple of 100,000 people and then sit all day on the soundstage waiting to do 2 lines after the kids could finish. We had to wait till the kids finished, very strict about that. And we had a great teacher, but she was very strict. And we never asked her to break the rules anyway, because that's a bad idea. So no, everybody has to be patient. That's all.
Stop there to change the tape.